We all know of high flyers and crash landings, but in the world of AFL, few have endured such a dramatic fall from grace as has Ricky Nixon. A former player who became the founder and driver of the groundbreaking player management business Flying Start, his life degenerated to embarrassment, shame and public ridicule in recent years. All of his own doing, according to public opinion. Welcome, Ricky. It's a bleak picture, isn't it?
It is, Mike.
Your marriage, your business, your assets, your reputation, your dignity.
Yep.
All gone.
Yep. It's a big basket, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, that's a pretty stark statement for a bloke to say to another bloke face to face. How do you feel about that?
Oh, look, it's been a journey, for want of a word, the last 3 years. Not a very good journey, a terrible journey, to be honest, for not just me, but I mean, in player management, I used to say everyone would talk about the top of the pyramid, the Ben Cousins or Wayne Carey or Ricky Nixon, and underneath there are a lot of people who suffer when something goes wrong at the top. And, I've got a lot to make up, particularly to my two boys and my wife, about my behaviour over a period of time.
So many questions, and we'll get to those, but I must say you look healthier, fitter and more content than I've seen you for 4 or 5 years. Yeah,
look, it's the best I've felt for probably 10. I went through a very bad period, not when people think, with hotel rooms and things, but well before that I went through a very bad period that I covered up for a long time. And, I've realised now that the secret to life is balance and being fit and healthy and, running every morning and every night and enjoying my life and putting a smile on not only my face but others around me makes you feel a lot better.
Ricky, I want to remind you about a few headlines that you've spawned in the last couple of years.
You have to, Mike?
I know this will be uncomfortable, but this is some of them. Sex, lies and videotapes. Ricky's shame. We didn't have sex. The Nixon scandal. Drugs probe. Give him the boot. How does that make you feel?
It makes me recognise that the media today is a reality show. It's not really news reporting, because news reporting is about reporting facts. And as I said, this is one of the very few times that people have heard my side of the story. And I can tell you what, after this interview, they won't be hearing it again because I'm sick of it. And it's been going for 3 years. It's a reality show that just keeps going and going and going. And it ain't going to be going from my side anymore.
Whenever I say to someone that I'm interviewing you, the instant response is, just ask him what happened. No, I mean, it's not specific, but it probably does encapsulate what most people think. What did happen? You were flying for such a long time, and then just this spiral that's taken you to places, dark places.
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd say is it's been very interesting the last 3 years that everything gets reported about me is only from one side. The opinions of people that arguably might have been in rooms or whatever, but no one's ever asked me what happened to me. And, probably when I look back, people would be surprised to know that my biggest client back in 2007, I think it was, or 8, was Clinton Gribus, who was a young and up-and-coming talent in the media. He came to me when I think he was earning $60,000, and I remember a friend showed me a tape of him, or an audio tape of him commentating on a game, and I went, wow, this kid, I think I can make him the next Mike Sheahan or the next whoever, Jason Dunst or whatever. And I said to him, I don't know why, I'll be making you 200 grand within 12 months. Well, within, I reckon, 12 months, he was earning 500 or 600 grand. He was my biggest fee player.
So he'd gone from the ABC to 3AW. Yeah,
yes, correct.
You negotiated that deal?
Yes, yeah. And I'd, from memory, a deal with Foxtel, and I'll never forget, he came to my office 2 weeks before Christmas and he had a cut on his face and he was bruised, and I was in shock. I said, what's happened? He goes, I think someone's broken into my apartment last night and bashed me. I said, Clinton, that can't happen. So we went back to his apartment and looked through the apartment and didn't seem to be any signs of entry. But on his balcony, and it's always good in hindsight, was blood on the edge of the balcony. And he lived on doesn't matter, the 7th, 8th, 10th floor.
He was on City Road, wasn't he?
He was on City Road.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, looking back now, he must have fallen in his sleep and hit his head. So I sat him down and said, look, I'm no doctor, but this just doesn't seem right to me. The fact you can't remember it, you're sleepwalking. I think you should go and get a check. And I actually did a bit of research myself about sleepwalking and why people would not remember and why you would be doing that. And anyway, I met him a few days before Christmas and I said, how'd you go with the doctor? And he said, yeah, the doctor said, I'm all fine. A week later, I was lying on the beach at Point Lonsdale next to my wife, and my phone rang, and I looked at it, and it was Graham Mott from 3AW. And I turned to my wife, and I said, "Clinton's dead." And she said, "What?" I said, "Oh my God, Clinton's dead." And I said, "Graham," he said, "Ricky, I've got bad news." Now, I don't know why I thought that. And to this day, it haunts me that I didn't follow up if he went to the doctor or not. I know I probably shouldn't blame myself, but, you know, could I have stopped anything like that? Probably not. But then,
But he was a young, fit-looking man, wasn't he?
Yep, he was early 30s. In fact, the irony of this a bit was that the coroner at the time was at a holiday house where I was next door, and we were having a barbecue not long after, and I asked him what happened. We all want to know why he died or how he died, because he died in his sleep. And the answer was that basically 2,000 men under 30 die every year in Australia. You just die. Your heart just stops. There's no real reason.
So there was no finding after the
There was no
autopsy?
finding, and one of the reasons was to get a proper finding, they probably had to keep his brain for several months, and the family, and it's their decision, decided that was his whole life, his intellectual property, his talent was his brain, and that they wanted him to be buried with his brain, and I can understand that. Unfortunately for me and a good friend of mine, Lorena, who was at the time the girlfriend of Clinton, and they were to be married, a dispute started between the family and Lorena, and I got caught up in that, and it went for well past 6 to 12 months, and it changed my whole outlook on people a lot. I just felt that here I was busting my balls for players and girlfriends and families and everybody around town 7 days a week, and like they're just doing my head in. And I drove to the office that this day I can remember it as clear as anything, and I just drove straight past. And I went down to Point Lonsdale where I had a holiday house, and I just locked the door and I stayed there for 4 or 5 days, and that was the start of the downhill.
Do you think that you were actually cooked at that point? No.
Look, I'd never been a big drinker. I'd never taken drugs in my life up until I got into my 40s, which would surprise some people. I was the most anti-drug person in the world. My friends, while I was playing AFL football, smoked joints, and like everyone does at uni, I never touched drugs in my life. I hated them. But, you know, I fell for it when I got in my early 40s, and we can probably come back to that.
Yeah, we will come back to that. Because in the broader picture, there was a song in the 70s called Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll.
Yep.
You could do a contemporary version of that, couldn't you?
Well, I think too...
that's the public perception.
Yeah, look, it is a public perception, and, you know, I see it now on social media. People have a perception, party boy and out and about, and it's a perception thing more than anything. I mean, my friends will tell you that know me really well, I like nothing more than being at home on my own. But
you could have fooled a lot of people on that front.
Look, I'm a person who loves life. You know, I want to live till I'm 250. I hate the thought of dying, even though I've given it a good crack.
Well, I tell you what, you must have got pretty close to it in the last 5 years.
Well, there was twice I was dead. Once and twice I probably was seconds off being dead.
Tell us about those situations.
When the hotel incident happened...
this is with the so-called St Kilda schoolgirl, correct?
Once again, contrary to what's reported in the media that I fled the country and everything, I was already going to Ireland. I go to Ireland every late February to look at the talent. They play university games over there. So I thought I'm going to get out of here and try and sort this out in my head. But, you know, I was bamboozled by what had happened a lot, because I was drugged in a hotel room. And I didn't know.
You were drugged, what, self-administered or inflicted upon you?
Inflicted upon me. And I have evidence to support that now. And I went overseas.
So this is the night when that infamous picture was taken that appeared in the Herald Sun, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So I got on a plane, and to get to Ireland, you've got to go through the UK or through London, Heathrow. When I got there, a good friend of mine, Matt Tripp and Paul Stokey, who have been very good to me through this period, basically said, stay here, don't go to Ireland, the media will be there. So unfortunately for me, they left the next day. They were there on business, and that was 10 days of an absolute blur. I took a drug that I'm not going to go into what and how and everything else. It doesn't serve any purpose.
We're in London when you took this drug. Yep.
And I'd never taken a lot of it before that, but I took a lot of it in the next 10 days.
Well, I've got to ask you this. Was it cocaine?
It might have been. Yeah.
Okay, so you took the drug.
Yep.
Yep.
And you know, my wife and everyone was very concerned, and my staff. At one stage, the hotel had to break the door down to see if I was alive. And one night, I was in such a state about what had happened and what I'd done to my family, and what the media had written and said, and just were making it up essentially because they had no fodder from me, that I walked out onto the Thames across a bridge and I stood on it and I was going to jump, and it's happened to me twice. My wife saved my life. She rang, and I was looking down.
Just by chance?
Well, chance, I suppose, yes. It wasn't like it was planned. She'd been ringing me for days, but I hadn't answered. I don't know why I answered that night.
Was this a drug-induced stupor for 10 days, was it?
I think it was everything. It wasn't much alcohol. It was a drug-induced stupor, but it was more a breakdown. I was at the point where I was actually totally broken person. And when I looked down, and this will haunt me for the rest of my life, when I looked down at the water and I was about to jump, my two sons, Lewis and Mitch, are looking up at me saying,
Wow.
Don't do it. And I just said, I've got to go. I've got to go. And she rang and I said, I was like this.
So you're on the bridge?
I was on the bridge and I said, what do you want? Stop ringing me, sort of thing. And she's like, you're going to get a phone call from Rod Butters in a minute. You bloody answer it on behalf of your kids. You just do it. And she hung up. And I'm like... And before I knew it, the phone was ringing. It was Rod Butters. And I knew Rod, not well, but knew him. And
Rod Butters is the former St Kilda
president. And, what was said between Rod and I really can't remember greatly. All I do know is Rod talked me off the bridge. And he talked me into getting back on a plane and coming back to Australia.
Did he know what your mental state was at the time?
Oh, I think he just probably guessed. And I believe he'd spoken to people at the AFL, perhaps even at the highest level, about trying to help me, because everyone knew I was in a very delicate situation. I don't think anyone knew I was standing on a bridge about to jump. And to get on that plane the next day, I'd had no sleep for 10 days. I remember going to the airport and, you have to put your baggage and wait an hour. I was in a cubicle with my head between my legs going, I can't do this, I can't do this.
You can't come home?
Everything. I can't come home. I just physically, I was gone. I needed to sleep. I had to put one foot in front of the other to get on the plane. And when I got on the plane and it was going out onto the tarmac, I tried to get off. And they said, you can't get off, you have to sit down.
You're on the plane?
Yeah. And luckily for me, on the way back to Australia, it's, a 30-hour flight or whatever it is, I slept most of the way. And
naturally, or did you have
just
something to help you?
Yeah. No, I would never take sleeping pills or anything like that.
But how can you sit there and say, you're in this situation because of substances you've taken, and yet you'd never take sleeping pills?
Well, I'm just one of those people that I've taken a drug. We don't need to keep going over and over it, Mike. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. I'm not a big believer in any medication whatsoever, to be honest. It's just me. Each to their own. People can believe what... People love to have an opinion of me, and I'm not here to change it anymore.
You did say before, it was such a profound story that I'll let you go, but you did sort of say you implied that the media had made up so much stuff about you. Is that fair?
I think it's balanced? Fair that the public know that, to pay a female $250,000 who's under the age of 20, several media outlets, two in particular.
TV networks.
Yep, to lie, and who was found to be a pathological liar. At the end of the day, I look at it like this. I'm not going to give any more attention to someone like that. I went to a hotel room and I shouldn't have. There's only one person to blame, and that's me.
Can I ask you why you went there, though?
A person 2 weeks before that had claimed to have a drug overdose. It was proven. She was found in a reception of a hotel and taken to hospital. I was down at Point Lonsdale. 2 weeks later, that same person rang and said she'd overdosed again. I went to the hotel room for that reason. I shouldn't have gone there. It was the damsel in distress situation. I actually, on the way to that hotel room, I don't know why, said to myself, this is a setup. You're going down. But I was mentally in such a bad way for a variety of reasons that compounded the whole travel or the journey to there. And it sounds silly, but it's almost like, I'm going here, just neck me, get it over and done with.
Really?
Yeah.
If in fact someone did administer something to you that they shouldn't have, when did that happen?
I believe it happened in the hotel room. I'm not going to go on about this, Mike, because I just don't feel it's appropriate to keep going on and on about it. It happened 3 years ago, but I will say this, is that I rang my brother, one of my brothers, who's in the police force, and I said to him, I've been drugged. And he said, get your ass out of there and get out of there now. And all I know was that I was found at some stage laying on the concourse outside Etihad Stadium. That's not reported.
But the Herald Sun story said that you were seen leaving that hotel room the next morning and getting into your car?
It was 3 days later, not the next morning.
3 days later?
My wife will verify I was at home. I went back to the hotel room because my car was in the street. I berated a certain female in the reception area. I then went to get in my car and was photographed getting into my car. You'd have to ask yourself the question, why was that person there taking photos of me unless they'd been rung? Is that a setup? You have to also ask yourself this question, why would that person ring that certain female at 2 o'clock in the morning and ask to go and see her when you're in the presence of the person?
So let's identify some people here. You're talking about a journo ringing the St Kilda schoolgirl. Is that what we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah. So do you think there was a conspiracy?
Well, I think the best thing to do is leave it up to the public to decide that. I really can't be bothered spending one more second of my life on it.
Okay. Tell me how you felt when you saw Mitch Duncan and Jimmy Bartell dressed up as Ricky Nixon and the St Kilda schoolgirl at Mad Monday.
I thought Jimmy looked pretty ordinary in that green frock, but Mitch
undies.
Mitch looked all right. Ironically, they were exactly the same undies, I think. I've still got them. Someone offered to buy them off me one day.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was going to donate them to charity, but anyway. What was funny was, it's an important part of the jigsaw in the last 3 years, is Steve Johnson and Andrew Mackey, who I didn't manage at all and never have. I met them socially many years ago and they became good friends. And through a lot of this, they've been very supportive to me. In fact, when I was at Point Lonsdale, and in a very, very bad way, they came and saw me. And to do that said to me, that's why that club's great. And Brian Cook and Neil Baum have been very supportive of me, and Cookie's been great, to be honest. Spent time with me. But back to the boys, so I don't know whether it was Mackie or Johnson sent me a text saying, hey, Chicken, the boys are dressed up as you. I didn't know anything about it. And the media were ringing my phone. I'm like, I didn't know what it was about. They said, here's Jimmy's number. Put a rocket up him. So I've texted him, you prick, get those clothes off or I'll come down and bash you, you little prick. You, He's absolutely packed. Of course, the boys are in Mad Monday, high-fiving each other about
They're very inventive, the Geelong boys,
yeah,
aren't
they're
they?
very inventive.
Yeah.
And but they've been, a lot of the Geelong boys, to be honest, I didn't manage them, but I don't know why, but I have a good relationship.
You're down that side of town.
I suppose it could be a bit
the peninsula, though. You said in your own words, you're in a very, very bad way at Point Lonsdale. What period are we talking about?
Sort of pretty much straight after the hotel incident, through that winter, in that April period, sort of March, April period when I got back from London. I was at Point Lonsdale, the media outside 24/7 up in trees and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you'd hate to think if you'd actually murdered a busload of nuns, wouldn't you? It was actually ridiculous. I think when you look back now, and the amount of people in the street who say to me, God, this has been so blown out of proportion. Forget about my personal life, what I was doing. You went to a bloody hotel room. Who hasn't done that? But back to the point,
in your own words, what was that term you used about inappropriate?
No, I didn't use it. The Herald Sun used it.
Well, you agreed to that, did you not?
I agreed to it because I stupidly agreed. They told me that they wouldn't play the video that they'd shown her if I agreed to using the word inappropriate, and if I agreed to saying I took alcohol to the room, which I didn't.
You did not?
No, I did not. And that's another absolute load of crap.
So you didn't take alcohol to the room, as reported, and you didn't, it wasn't your creation, the inappropriate.
I'll tell you something else about that hotel room, but I'm going to keep short and sweet. There was an 8-month police investigation, right, that didn't find that I'd done anything wrong. Yet the Players Association held an impromptu tribunal hearing that I didn't get a chance to say anything out. I was denied natural justice. And David Galbally, grandstanded the whole time and did a report that said in it, Victorian police had provided him with information. Now, I ask the question, in any private business, where do the police provide information from a current investigation to a private business? I mean, that just doesn't happen anywhere in the world. That's how much everyone got caught up in it. And people wanted to put badges of honour on their chest and everything else. I've
got to ask you one more question on that, even though you're tired of this topic. If you say, No,
we can go on for years about it if you want to.
But you said, you're in the paper saying you accept that you had, in fact, you said that you had inappropriate dealings with the 17-year-old girl.
Correct. I said that because it was a deal struck on not putting the video online. What we didn't know at that time, and you didn't, and neither did everybody else in this studio, is that Twitter and Facebook and everything was about to explode, and that there was no way that wasn't going to go viral, that video, ever. So that was one of the stupidest decisions I ever made, was agreeing to use those words. They're not my words. Yes, I was quoted on them, but they're not what happened.
Well, okay, she says that you had sex.
I don't care what she says.
No, but this is the problem. She says that you had sex. I read in the paper that you say you've had inappropriate dealings with her. Therefore, conclusion, I think Ricky Nixon's probably had sex with her.
Yep. Next question. Now, Mick, before I go on, Mike, though, look, in fairness, we do say stupid things sometimes, all of us. I mean, I've had friends who say that Alistair Clarkson was going to the West Coast Eagles. So, Mike,
I know that
we all make stupid mistakes.
Geez, Ricky, okay, let's move on. I interviewed you 10 years ago for the Herald Sun.
Yep.
One of your quotes was, in fact, in that story I said you'd have a much more profound impact on football as an administrator than you did as a player.
In a variety of ways, Mike.
Your quote was, my vision is that 10 years down the track, all my players are set up for the rest of their life. Yep. Now, I think a lot of them were. Not all of them, but did you forget about yourself in that equation?
Yeah, look, it's something that, I think everyone would be able to appreciate that you have ups and downs in life. My dip and my fall was pretty big.
Yep.
You don't get much bigger. But at the end of the day, you either do something about it or you go away and hide, and I like to do something about everything in life. So, look, it was a big fall, but... in the end, I started to do something about it.
Let's paint the picture. You're married, you've got a big house in Kew, you've got 2 boys, your business is flying. What sends a bloke from that situation into this downward spiral?
Some psychologists who did a report on me, an assessment, was sort of interesting. That it's like, okay, let's just go through your life, and I'm not going to spend 10 minutes telling you, but it's like, okay, you went to primary school, you were captain of the footy team, captain of the school, you're academically very good, you fly through VCE, you get recruited by Carlton at 17, you go to a footy club that wins 3 premierships in 4 years, you marry the most beautiful girl on the block and have 2 great kids in a big house and everything else, and then you play AFL football, then you become a manager and you manage all the big stars. Gee, nothing too much has gone wrong, has it? I said, no, it hasn't. And they said, we know what's wrong with you. I said, what? Tell me, because I want to know what's wrong with me. You didn't have any more mountains to climb, did you? And that resonates with me.
Do you believe that you've done it all, do you? That's
I
a
believe...
positive picture, but you haven't actually split the atom, or you haven't... I mean, you've been a successful sportsman and gone into business and made a success of that. Are you entitled to say, I've done it all?
I wouldn't say you've done it all. I mean, I think someone like me has got a massive amount of adrenaline. I don't like sleeping because I believe it wastes half your life. And I'm serious. I don't treat that as a joke. It's a waste of time sleeping. I just like doing things. So unless you stimulate my brain, I started to use other stimulants, which were wrong. I've now found things in my life that stimulate me way better. Laughing makes me, stimulates me, running, being healthy, eating good food, having friends around you that are good friends. Not friends who are patting you on the back, like some footballers get, and they start to go down a track that's the wrong track.
But you had all of that, and then you blew it.
Yeah, I did.
So you're talking about...
But I'm man enough to say I did.
Yeah, I understand that, and I admire the fact that you've been prepared to talk so candidly about it, but you're talking about not wasting a moment of your life, and you've blown 3 or 4 years, haven't you?
Yeah, but if you look back, the people who've worked for me at Flying Start will tell you that I always used to say, I'm not interested in what happened yesterday. I'm not interested in what happens today. That's what our competitors are doing. Let's talk about tomorrow.
Okay. When we talked before about the substance abuse, how did that start?
To be honest, I can't remember. I think it's...
You will remember. You're anti-drugs, in your own words.
I can
You're
remember
clean
when
liver.
and where. I mean, it's a situation where I don't need to say the venue, if you like, for want of a word, but someone saying...
Was it a pub or was it a...
It was in some person's house saying, try this. And I'm like, I don't do that stuff. But like a lot of us, and I've heard a couple of footballers who've been victims of this, it's you take one, it's suddenly you want 2 and you want 3. And, I've learnt now to say no. And you've got to say no. I'm not going to keep dwelling on it, Mike. The thing I will say about this, about drugs, is this. Is you've taken one, you've taken 1,000. People are fascinated by drugs. They love to hear stories about drugs. They don't want to hear about the number of times you went to the hospital and helped the kids with cancer. And I don't think it's appropriate to keep going over and over it again because it doesn't do my 2 sons much good.
No.
And they want to see their dad up and going again.
Okay. But I know this is raw and brutal, but it's a situation of your creation, isn't it? And it's part of your public persona now.
Yeah.
Are you prepared to tell me the last time you took a substance that you shouldn't have?
I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't know.
What is it, days, weeks, months?
Oh, it's months. Years.
Months, yeah.
Probably possibly years. Yeah.
Is it?
Yep.
Can I ask you one more?
Yep.
Sensitive issue, but were you addicted?
It's a good question, because I can remember being with Ben Cousins when the doctor who sees all the doctors who have got addictions, who, by the way, is one of the biggest crises going around, explained to me the difference between a drug taker and an addict. And a drug taker can manage their drug taking, but their body isn't reliant on it. An addict could take half as many drugs but needs them every day. If you're dependent on it to get out of bed, as a friend said to me, if it affects your work or it affects your personal life, you're addicted. Okay. And in the end it did. So I was addicted.
Ricky, you told the Herald Sun in July 2012, quote, "I can absolutely assure you that my life isn't spiralling out of control." It was, wasn't it?
That's a standard answer from someone in denial, Mike. And people watching this show who say that to their family and friends, take the first step and get help. Because I'll tell you what, you're only the top of the pyramid, and you're making people underneath you suffer because of your poor decision making. It's hard to make a decision, by the way, when you're a crazy person. And you're a crazy person when you're drinking too much or doing drugs. And I'm not here to be a preacher. It's far from the most unreligious person in the world. But guess what? Make the first decision, because it'll tell you what, you'll never regret it for the rest of your life.
Next Monday night on Open Mic.
He looked up and he just said, "You know what? I just want my dad back."
Cousins, Wayne Carey, Gary Ablett Sr. You had all of those blokes under your care. All of them went off the rails at different times in different ways.
Yeah.
Do you feel any culpability about that?
We put sports people and high-profile people on this pedestal they don't deserve to be on.
The fact that you are no longer Ricky Nixon running Flying Start must have cost you a lot of money in the past 4 or 5 years.
No, I've got nothing.
You're penniless, are you?
I'm penniless.
What's the origin of and the meaning of Toot Toot?
Toot toot.
What is your new business, Ricky?
Flying Start will rise from the ashes.
Really?
Part 2 of the Ricky Nixon interview. 9:30 next Monday night on Fox Footy. This has been a Fox Footy production for Fox Sports.